are Douglas Coupland, come on up. You know him as a novelist. You know the titles Gen X, in addition to the language, Microsurfs, Life After God, but you may not know that he is also a sculptor. And while the general liked the figurines, Diane obviously didn't.
She sure is feisty, isn't she?
She is. So perhaps a little later in your talk, you'll explain yourself?
Absolutely.
Right. You want to begin with a video?
Why not?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's have a look at this.
I would like to ask you now, if you would please, to rise for the singing of O Canada.
So young? Okay. Thank you. Now, when I spoke to Jennifer, she said, and Moses also said, no notes. Just wing it. And 2 years ago, I spoke at the TED IdeaCity, and they had this sort of public meltdown on stage because I didn't have enough to say. Now I've got too much. Now here's what's on my mind. Well, there's an aphorism, it may or not be true, may or may not be true, that 50% of guys think about sex 99% of the time, and the other half thinks about sex 90% of the time. And this has me freaked out because I think about sex maybe 3% of the time. And like already I'm thinking to myself, what time is it? 4 or something? If I started thinking about sex right now, I still wouldn't have a statistically adequate amount of sex in my day. So I thought, okay, you know what? Someone else has got to compensate for that. So Preston, when you come up on stage, We can see your thought balloon, buddy. Well, I think I made some notes. First of all, that feisty Diane, the pieces up here on the front, they come from an experience I had in Vancouver, where I live. Let's see, and if you've heard the story before, I apologize for the repetition. My niece was born almost exactly 3 years ago in Lionsgate in North Vancouver with no left hand, which is, we weren't prepared for it, no family is, and it was strange, and she's a delightful child now, always has been. And then this funny thing happened. The nurses in the delivery room at Lionsgate mentioned to my father, who is a GP there, that they'd been there 30 years and had never seen such an extraordinary spike in the number of limb anomalies and birth deformities there at Lionsgate. And so, is this true? Could this be true? And it turned out that there was a big spike. And what do? It was on the front page of the Sun, and you hope for some sort of justice, and they were going to do an investigation, and the closest they could come to any form of answer is that in October of 1998, there was something in the air or wind or water of Deep Cove, North Vancouver, West Van, Squamish, Whistler, that caused a number of deformities in children born there. About the same time as this was all happening, I went to school, art school, that's my training, a sculptor. I was down at Walmart. Oh, by the way, it's a pleasure to be here in Toronto, our nation's capital. So I was in Walmart and getting a few things. I'm going down the shampoo aisle, and like, it was like this Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Richard Dreyfuss, building a big Devil's Tower National Monument out of mashed potatoes. And I hucked everything into my cart and put one of every shampoo in. And that just, oh boy. And then I went to cleaning products, great category. Ended this huge cart, and I put it through. And the clerk's like, that's the scariest load of anything anyone's ever taken to my till. And so I went home and flushed everything right down the toilet. Oh, what, like it wasn't going there anyway? And then everyone realizes, well, oh wait, I'm just as culpable as you. And then it goes quiet. And then I began making mutant squeeze bottles. I'm really going on too long about this. And then one thing I've always found to be true is that as long as you have a hunch and you go by it and you just run with it, the answer and why you were thinking about it will always come to you. In this case, it was my friend Angela, a painter. She said, well, you know Dougal, people I went to art school with call me Dougal. If you think about it, I mean, your niece's hand is the result of all these scary things inside the bottles, isn't it? And so you have these bottles, they pollute the environment, children are born without hands, and they can no longer use the bottles. And it was like, okay, ooh. So if you told me 5 years ago I'd be doing environmental pop art, I would have thought you were silly. So that's what these are all about. And I also did them to piss off Diane. Well, okay. What I'm passionate about, this is not something I would have expected. Canada. About 3-4 years ago, I did a book on Vancouver. It was called City of Glass. And, okay, the green light's on. I was in Amsterdam about 5 years ago. I had a cold. I went to get some Sudafed or something. Went to all the apothecaries. We don't carry it. We don't believe in the American model of medicine. You've got to be crazy. They give me these little drops made out of lawn clippings or something. You know, they do nothing. I want drugs, damn it, because my dad's a doctor. I'm a drug family member. So I said, no, just something, Otrivin, pseudoephedrine hydrochloride, how hard can this be? No, 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 no. And it wouldn't go away, it was getting worse. And finally, out of desperation, I had to go to this, in the sex district, to AIDS HIV clinic, where I had to like, plead my case for Sudafed. And I got this really long lecture on how I shouldn't be using that. And meanwhile, people are coming in, like shooting up right there. In January this year, I was down in Georgia and had an allergic reaction to a plant that was just blooming or whatever. Had to get some Allegra, which is over the counter here. $1,100 US later, plus a $100 prescription. I have like a dozen Allegra tablets. So Canada kind of fits in the middle of these two extremes, I think. I'm glad about that. There is all this talk in the papers, like, maybe we should get rid of the dollar. And it's always sort of posed as, we spoke to a lot of people and they think getting rid of the dollar is a good thing. Or, you know, who really needs that border? And we spoke to a few experts and they thought it might not be a bad idea. And I thought, are you nuts? Like, and I quizzed every single person in my universe for the next week. And like, we almost wanted to puke at the thought of losing the border. And I think this is where our sense of nationhood gets eroded chip by chip. First it's the dollar, then it's the border, and then I used this line 2 years ago, but I'll use it again. And then we lose New Brunswick in a poker game. And people like Canada. Why do we sew flags in our back? Because we're not after more territory. Canada's never going to be any larger than it is right now. It can only ever shrink, which means we have to be eternally vigilant to the things that might make us shrink. Invasion. I have this, okay, here's random. I get random very quickly. I have this theory that people in the States, when they enter the witness relocation program, they don't go to Seattle, they don't go to Portland, they go to Winnipeg. Okay, there, I've said it. A day later, Doug's body was found rolled up in a carpet, Lake Ontario. What else about Canada? Oh gosh. I used to work, let's talk about softwood lumber, that's sexy. I feel like Johnny Carson or something. I don't like that. But sexy softwood lumber. Okay, I used to work, believe it or not, in '86 designing baby cribs in Vancouver in a company called Stortcraft. How I got the job remains a mystery. But a lot of the cribs used spindles made from alder, which is like just the weed tree of the tree world. And alder, well, BC is drowning in alder. We can get it cheaply and easily. We had to, a lot of the time we had to go down to Oregon and sort of negotiate for lumber from there, wood. I get dry mouth when I talk. And it's a delicious martini in disguise. What surprises me in BC, where this is really hitting hard, is, oh, we can't sell our logs. You better just close up then. Why even bother? Why not make something from them? It drives me nuts. We do not, well, Vancouver especially, we don't make anything. Why aren't we doing more with what we have? Why do we have to slut it away to other people who then apply intelligence and a bit of labor to it, and we buy it back for money? I think it's crazy. Thank you. You know? How do we get there? Whose phone number do we have to like call? Oh, what else, what else? The other thing, well, I've noticed about Canada, which is very different from our nearest social analog, which is the US, is how jealous we all are of each other. I mean, can you honestly imagine someone from Florida reading in the paper that, you know, Idaho's getting a new freeway? Like, damn those Idahoans. But, you know, here in Canada, you know, wait, somewhere in Nova Scotia, they're painting fresh yellow lines on the road. Why don't we have that? There's a radio show in Vancouver, Rafe Mayer, I don't know if any of you know him. He's a nice guy, I like going on a show, but, you know, Rafe, what if we're talking about something and the phone no one phones. And he said, oh, that's easy. I just say, what about Quebec, huh? And the switchboard lights up. And why is that happening? I mean, look at the States. They've got 260-something million people who have absolutely nothing in common except the fact they've been told they have something in common. And you have Canada, where we actually have a bit more in common, but still it's not like, you know, we all got off the same boat or something. Why do we foster this culture of interregional jealousy? There must be a technical name for that. You know, I'll admit, it used to really, you know what really drives me nuts? Is that bridge they made to Prince Edward Island. And I think Prince Edward Island is now, the island is now a peninsula, technically. You know, I don't think they even wanted it very much. But they got it. Vancouver, desperate need of bridges and tunnels. They were never going to get a penny. And it makes me mad. And all this stuff makes me mad. French on boxes made me mad. But you know, I was thinking about this. What this does, French on boxes, it's this unique drama that's specific to Canadians that is something we share amongst ourselves in a weird, it's like the new Coke. Like, basically, we're not that smart and we're not that dumb. If sort of the French thing worked. I don't mind subsidizing all these places anymore. Something happened. It has never felt as different to be Canadian as opposed to anything else as it does right now in 2002. Why is this happening? Everything about our society is under attack, dissolving, being underfunded, defunded. I don't know. I'm so excited to be Canadian. I'll close up something sort of soft and gushy. My dad's in the Air Force. He used to put up the flag every July 1st, and we were like, oh God, that's so embarrassing. Now, my niece and nephew, they're in the car, and it's a really good game if any of you have kids. It's like 10 points to anyone who sees a Canadian flag. And they're like, flag! And they're like beating each other up, trying to point one out. And my goal from this trip, this is like from a 6-year-old, is get me the biggest Canadian flag that you possibly can. That gives me like a little warm fuzzy. But it's cool, it's really great. And I think, I don't worry about the country. And I think my time here is up. There you go. Thank you very much, all of you.